Welcome to the world of science fiction. Today we will listen to a story called The Last Equation. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. They said mathematics was the universal language. I never believed it until the day I stood before the collective's high council, solving an equation that would either save humanity or condemn us to extinction. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and 3 months ago, I was just another theoretical physicist working in obscurity at Cambridge. My days were filled with grant proposals, teaching undergraduates who couldn't care less about quantum mechanics, and research that no one outside my tiny field would ever read. I'd made peace with that life. It was quiet, predictable, safe. Then the Vaxari arrived, not with weapons or threats, but with a simple message broadcast across every screen, every device, every communications network on Earth. Solve this or perish. The equation they sent was unlike anything we'd ever seen. It wasn't just mathematics. It was something more, something alive, numbers that shifted and changed, variables that seemed to breathe. Our greatest minds looked at it and saw chaos. I looked at it and saw a pattern, though I couldn't yet explain what that pattern meant. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment everything changed. The Vaxari ships appeared without warning, blocking out the sun over every major city on Earth. They were massive, crystalline structures that defied our understanding of physics. No exhaust, no visible propulsion, just silent, beautiful, and utterly terrifying. For 48 hours, they simply waited. The world held its breath. Then the message came. I was in my apartment when my phone, my laptop, my television, everything lit up simultaneously with those words and that equation. The timing was perfect, synchronized globally, down to the nanosecond. Around the world, every government scrambled. The United Nations convened an emergency session. Military forces went on high alert, though what good missiles would do against technology so far beyond ours, nobody could say. And scientists, like me, we were summoned. They gathered us in Geneva, 200 of the brightest mathematical minds on the planet. Physicists, mathematicians, computer scientists, even philosophers. The equation was projected on a massive screen, and we were given one instruction: solve it. We had 30 days. The first week was chaos. Everyone had theories, approaches, methodologies. The Russians proposed it was a quantum mechanics problem. The Americans thought it was relativistic. The Chinese team believed it was something entirely new. Arguments erupted. Egos clashed, and the equation remained unsolved. I spent those first days in the corner of the main hall, barely speaking to anyone. My natural introversion, which had always been a liability in academic politics, became an asset here. While others debated and theorized, forming alliances and drawing battle lines, I simply watched the equation. Hour after hour, I stared at it until my eyes burned and my head pounded. I noticed something they didn't. The way certain numbers repeated, not in obvious patterns, but in subtle rhythms. The way variables seemed to dance around each other. The rhythm in the chaos reminded me of something my grandmother used to say when I was a child struggling with my homework. Sarah, even in the loudest room, if you listen carefully enough, you can hear the whispers. On day 8, I made my first breakthrough. The equation wasn't static. It was responding to us. Every time someone input a potential solution, the equation changed, adapted, evolved. It was learning from our attempts, incorporating our logic into its structure. I realized with a chill that ran down my spine. We weren't just solving a problem. We were having a conversation with an intelligence we couldn't begin to comprehend. I approached Dr. Morrison, the lead coordinator, with my findings. He was a tall, imposing man with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many failures, too many projects canceled, too many grants denied. He'd been chosen for this role because of his reputation as a hard-nosed realist who could wrangle egos and get results. "Dr. Chen," he said, glancing at my notes with barely concealed skepticism, not even bothering to hide the dismissal in his voice. "We don't have time for philosophical interpretations. We need hard mathematics. We need solutions, not poetry." "This is hard mathematics," I insisted, my frustration building, my voice rising despite my usual reserve. "But it's also communication. The Vaxari aren't testing our computational power. They're testing our ability to understand, to listen, to respond appropriately to something we've never encountered before." He dismissed me with a wave of his hand. They all did. Volkov actually laughed. Hayes shook his head sadly, as if I'd lost my mind. So, I went back to my corner and continued working alone, filling notebook after notebook with observations that probably looked like nonsense to anyone else. On day 15, half our time gone, the mood in Geneva had shifted from determined to desperate. Several teams had suffered complete mental breakdowns. The equation was doing something to people who stared at it too long, fragmenting their thoughts, breaking their minds. 3 scientists had to be hospitalized. The world outside was descending into panic. Religious groups proclaimed the end times. Governments prepared for war they couldn't possibly win. But I was getting closer. I'd begun to see the pattern not as mathematics, but as language, as emotion, as intention. The equation was beautiful in a way that transcended numbers, that spoke to something deeper than logic. It was asking us something fundamental, something that went beyond mere calculation. Do you understand? Do you truly see? On day 20, with 10 days remaining, everything changed again. I was alone in the lab at 3 a.m., the equation glowing before me, when I felt it, a presence. I turned to find I wasn't alone anymore. Standing in the doorway was a figure, humanoid, but not human, tall and slender, with skin that seemed to shimmer between solid and translucent, eyes that held depths I couldn't fathom. A Vaxari. "Dr. Chen," it spoke, and its voice was like music and mathematics combined, each word a perfectly crafted equation that resonated in my bones. "You are the only one who sees." My heart hammered in my chest so hard I thought it might burst, but I forced myself to stand straight, to meet those impossible eyes. Sees what? That this was never about the equation. It moved closer, and I noticed it didn't quite walk, more like flowed through space, each movement graceful, beyond anything human. This is about whether your species can move beyond mere calculation, whether you can comprehend that the universe is not cold mathematics, but living thought, that knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. "Why us?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Years of defending my research in hostile academic meetings, giving me courage I didn't know I possessed. Why Earth? Why this test? What makes us worthy of your attention? The Vaxary's expression shifted, something that might have been sadness crossing its features, though reading emotion on that alien face was like trying to read emotions in a sunset. Beautiful, but fundamentally other. Because we have watched your species for 3 of your centuries. We have seen your potential and your poison. You split the atom before you learned to feed your hungry. You reached for the stars while your planet burned. You created artificial intelligence before you understood natural intelligence. You are brilliant and blind, capable of profound beauty and devastating destruction, often in the same moment. It gestured to the equation on the screen with one long, elegant finger. This is not a test of intelligence, Dr. Chen. It is a test of wisdom. Can you understand that some knowledge must be earned not through force or computation, but through genuine comprehension, through empathy, through the humility to recognize that you don't yet understand everything? I looked at the equation with new eyes, seeing it as if for the first time. It's not asking for a solution. It's asking if we're ready, if we've evolved enough to join whatever larger community exists out there. Yes, the Vaxary said softly, its voice filled with something like hope. And so far, all we have seen is your species attacking the problem with brute force, ego, and desperation, with the same mentality that has brought your planet to the brink of ecological collapse, all except you. You have been listening, learning, growing. What happens if we fail? I had to know, had to understand the stakes. The being's eyes held infinite sadness, and for a moment I saw reflected in them countless other species, countless other tests, countless other failures. Then we move on, and your species continues as it has, trapped in your cycle of brilliance and self-destruction, until you inevitably consume yourselves. We will not destroy you, Dr. Chen. You are doing that quite efficiently on your own. We simply hoped you might choose a different path. It began to fade, returning to wherever it had come from, its form becoming more translucent, more ethereal. But before it disappeared completely, it said one final thing that would echo in my mind for years to come. You have 10 days remaining. Show us that humanity can be more than what you have been. Show us you can evolve. I stood alone in that lab for hours after, staring at the equation, seeing it differently now. The weight of every human life pressed down on me, 8 billion souls, whose fate might rest whether I could make the others understand what I'd learned. Then I did something that would have seemed insane to any other scientist in that building, something that violated every principle of the scientific method I'd been taught. I stopped trying to solve the equation. Instead, I began to listen to it, to feel it, to understand it not as a problem, but as a conversation. For the next 7 days, I barely slept. I didn't try to input solutions or run computations. I simply observed, felt, understood. The equation was a symphony, and I was learning its melody, its rhythm, its emotional content. Other scientists thought I'd given up. Morrison tried to have me removed from the project, claiming I was wasting valuable time and resources, but something kept them from actually doing it. Perhaps they sensed I was onto something. Perhaps they were simply too desperate to dismiss any approach, no matter how unconventional. Or perhaps the Vaxary were protecting me in ways I couldn't perceive. On day 28, with only 48 hours remaining, I finally understood. The equation wasn't asking us to solve it. It was asking us to complete it, to add our own verse to its song, to contribute rather than conquer, to engage in dialogue rather than domination. I gathered everyone in the main hall, all 200 exhausted, frightened, brilliant minds. Morrison tried to object, started to call security, but I spoke over him, my voice carrying a conviction I didn't know I possessed. Years of being overlooked and underestimated, fueling a fire I'd kept buried. "We've been approaching this wrong," I said, my voice echoing in the sudden silence. "All of us. Every single one of us. We're trying to defeat this equation, to break it down and master it like it's some kind of enemy to be conquered. But that's not what it wants. That's not what they want. They're testing whether we can move beyond that paradigm." I pulled up my work on the main screen, and I heard gasps, whispers, someone crying. Not solutions, but patterns, harmonies, connections, visual representations of the equation as living music, as emotional content, as conversation. The Vaxari are testing whether we can collaborate with the unknown rather than dominate it, whether we can listen before we speak, whether we can recognize our own limitations and still move forward with humility. The equation is incomplete because it's waiting for our contribution, our perspective, our unique human insight. "This is madness," Morrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. He was as desperate as the rest of us. I could see it in his eyes. "Maybe," I admitted, meeting his gaze steadily. "But look at what happens when I input not a solution, but a question. When I respond to its pattern with our pattern. When I treat it as an intelligence rather than a puzzle. I demonstrated adding a sequence that was part mathematics, part music theory, part human experience, part emotion translated into numbers. The equation responded immediately, shifting, opening, revealing new dimensions we hadn't even known existed." Gasps echoed through the hall. Someone shouted in excitement. Volkov swore in Russian. Hayes started laughing, the sound edged with hysteria. "It's not testing our ability to answer," I said quietly, but everyone was listening now, every eye fixed on me and the transforming equation. "It's testing our ability to engage, to recognize that understanding is a dialogue, not a monologue. That wisdom comes from listening, not just speaking." For the next 36 hours, we worked together in a way humanity rarely does, in a way we should do more often. National boundaries dissolved. Egos evaporated like morning mist. Age-old academic rivalries were forgotten. We stopped competing and started composing. Each team added their unique perspective, not trying to solve, but to contribute, to harmonize with the alien mathematics before us, to add our human voice to the cosmic conversation. The Russian team added insights from their understanding of chaos theory, the beauty in apparent randomness. The Americans contributed observations from quantum mechanics, the strangeness of superposition and entanglement. The Chinese team wove in principles from ancient philosophy, concepts of balance and harmony that predated modern science. The Indians added perspectives from their mathematical traditions stretching back millennia. The Africans contributed insights from their unique approaches to geometric thinking. And slowly, beautifully, like a chorus finding its harmony, the equation began to sing. With 6 hours remaining, our hands shaking from exhaustion and excitement, we input our final contribution. a mathematical expression that encompassed not just logic and reason, but emotion, creativity, paradox, love, fear, hope, despair. The full spectrum of human experience translated into the language of the cosmos. Everything that made us human, for better and worse. The equation accepted it. And then it transformed. What appeared on our screens was no longer an equation, but a doorway. A gateway to understanding that transcended anything we'd imagined. It showed us glimpses of technologies that could heal our world, reverse the damage we'd done to our planet. Energy sources that could power our civilization without destroying our environment. Medical advances that could eliminate suffering, extend life, enhance human potential. Communication technologies that could bridge not just distance, but understanding itself. And beyond that, so much more. An invitation. The Vaxxery Collective was real, vast, an alliance of hundreds of species spanning galaxies, each contributing their unique perspective to a cosmic conversation that had been ongoing for millions of years. And they were offering us a place among them. But not as conquerors or even as equals, as students, as children taking our first steps into a larger universe with so much yet to learn. The Vaxxari appeared then, not just one, but hundreds, materializing in meeting halls across the globe, making their presence known to all of humanity simultaneously. The one who had visited me stood before our assembly in Geneva, and for the first time, I saw something like pride in its expression, something like joy. "Dr. Chen," it said, its voice filling the hall with warmth, "you have shown us what we hoped to see. That humanity, despite your flaws and your violence, despite your history of destruction, possesses something rare in the cosmos, the ability to change, to listen, to grow, to evolve not just biologically, but consciously, deliberately choosing to be better than you were." Tears streamed down my face, the weight of relief crushing and uplifting simultaneously. Every emotion I'd been holding back for 30 days flooding through me. "What happens now?" "Now," the Vaxxari said, its voice warm and welcoming, "you begin. We will share our knowledge, but slowly. We will guide, but not control. We will teach, but you must learn. You have earned the chance to join the collective, but the work of becoming worthy of that place, that has only just started. The real test begins now." Morrison approached me, after, his face a mixture of emotions I couldn't fully read. Pride, relief, exhaustion, shame, hope, all mixed together. "You saved us," he said simply, his voice breaking. "You saved all of us. I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner." I shook my head, fresh tears flowing. We saved ourselves by finally learning to work together, by recognizing that some problems can't be solved through force or individual brilliance. The Vaxxari didn't give us a mathematical test. They gave us a mirror. And for once, we didn't like what we saw enough to change. The months that followed were transformative. The Vaxxari taught us, slowly, carefully, the technologies and philosophies that could lift humanity into a new era. But they made it clear. This was a probationary period. We had shown potential, but potential means nothing without follow-through. We had taken the first step, but the journey would be long. I became humanity's primary liaison to the collective. My life, once quiet and academic, became something I never imagined. I traveled to their ships, learned their histories, met species whose existence would have seemed impossible just months before. But I never forgot that moment in the lab, alone at 3 a.m., when a being from across the stars taught me the most important lesson. Intelligence means nothing without wisdom. Knowledge means nothing without understanding. And progress means nothing if we lose our humanity in the pursuit of it. They said mathematics was the universal language. They were wrong. Mathematics is just the grammar. The universal language is something deeper. It's the willingness to listen, to learn, to recognize that in the vast cosmos, we are all students, all children, all works in progress. And sometimes the greatest equation we can solve is the one we write together.